Hi, everyone. My name is Sadudal Bhattacharjee. I'm a Senior Manager, Product Management for the Health AI organization at AWS. And today I'm going to talk about Amazon HealthLake and how you can use it to make sense of your health data. So let's get started. Let's first look at how the AWS machine learning stack looks like. If you look at the top, we are innovating on behalf of our customers to make it easy for enterprises to apply machine learning and artificial intelligence to their business use cases without having to know or hire skills specialized on machine learning and AI. The way we are doing that is by bringing different kinds of AI services, as we call them, across vision, speech, language, healthcare, and so on. So the top section shows all the different services that AWS has created, which are ready to use. It's all API driven. It comes with pre-trained machine learning models, which customers like yourself can use it on your specific use cases. They're all customizable in many ways, but it doesn't need all the heavy lifting required in order to train machine learning model, understand the intricacies of AI and ML. Today, we're going to talk more about the healthcare products. As you can see on top right, there are 3 different services that are listed: HealthLake, Comprehend Medical, and Transcribe Medical. The idea here is to use, make it easier to apply machine learning and AI on healthcare data. So we'll talk more specifically in this talk. We'll go deep into HealthLake, but just to quickly touch on the other 2 services. Comprehend Medical is a standalone service which uses natural language processing to take free-form text like a doctor's note, and it can understand and detect medical entities and basically make it in a structured format. The Comprehend Medical functionality is integrated within HealthLake, and it's called Integrated Medical NLP. So that's built in if you use HealthLake service. On top of that, there is also Transcribe Medical, which takes recorded conversations and converts into text using machine learning model. On the middle, if you see, we have what we call as the Amazon SageMaker, which is a fully managed AI ML platform that AWS has created. It gives you end-to-end from build, train, deploy machine learning models. And enterprises are using it as their base platform for AI ML, and then they build on top and customize. So you can either use specific services, or you can choose to use end-to-end. There's many sub-services that comes with Amazon SageMaker. And there is also a UI called SageMaker Studio. It's more like an IDE, which allows you to use and interact different services in a visual interface way, similar to the Jupyter Lab notebook experience. Our customers have been asking us to be able to use SageMaker and different capabilities of it on the healthcare data, and I'll talk more about how we are making that happen with HealthLake. The bottom layer is what we call as ML framework as the infrastructure. There we have different deep learning frameworks like TensorFlow, PyTorch, and MXNet. We have customized version of those which are fully integrated within Amazon Machine Images called Deep Learning Armies, as well as Deep Learning Containers, so that do-it-yourself customers who wants to get started with machine learning can use those armies and containers to get started on their machine learning journey. Let's go and look at healthcare and the problems that healthcare industries are facing. If you look at the different ways in which healthcare data exists today, they are in different formats, both structured as well as unstructured. The main issue here is that there is tons of unstructured data, which is very difficult to make sense out of because they're hidden. Like, for example, there's tons of valuable information in clinical notes where a patient goes and visits the doctor. The doctor is listening to the patient and making note of what the conversation happens, where the patient is sharing about their different medical conditions, when they had sudden symptoms, which medications they were taking on their own, and which date sudden things are happening, and the doctor takes notes of that. These are usually like free-form text, and I'll show you an example in a successive slide. And if you can interpret and extract information from that free-form text, you get significantly higher amount of data points than what you have from structured field like name, age, and address, and so on. Similarly, there are other kinds of data like insurance claims have tons of information. There is medical records, there is lab reports, then there are X-rays, images, CT scans, MRIs, as well as recorded conversation. All of those, if you can bring it in a centralized location and extract information both from structured and unstructured, it gives you a significantly high amount of data points. As you can see in the slide, without extracting information which is hidden, we had like 30 data points in a typical clinical model use case to train with or to interpret. Whereas after applying some of the techniques to extract information hidden, you now have 200 to 300,000 of data points, which is extremely useful for training machine learning models in order to get better accuracy and understanding of the patient's condition and improve treatment. So let's look at how HealthLake does that. So HealthLake, as you know, we are in GA, in general availability, in 3 different regions right now: US East 1, US East 2, and US West 2. But HealthLake as a service allows you to import all of these different kinds of data, both structured and unstructured, into a fully managed FHIR data store. FHIR here stands for Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources. It's the de facto standard going forward, where healthcare industry is kind of merging both payers and providers in order to exchange information in a standardized and uniform format. As we know, healthcare industry had suffered a lot from having different kind of standards all over. So as the industry is converging, in HealthLake, we decided to go with the standardized approach of using FHIR. So you get a fully managed FHIR data store, which is HIPAA eligible. It conforms to all the standards to store medical information with PHI data, which is personal health information. And then it's scalable. It automatically scales with needs, so without having to worry about the infrastructure underneath. And also it's compliant with different kinds of compliance requirement. And as I mentioned to you earlier, the part of extracting information from unstructured data is integrated within HealthLake as integrated medical NLP is what we call it, where we can take freeform text, as we discussed earlier, extract information, and then make it as part of the data record as the data is ingested. And then HealthLake also provides a set of APIs for managing the data store. So there is CRUD API for create, read, update, delete. There's import and export API. And then there's a robust set of search capabilities to make sense out of the FHIR resources as after they're ingested. The data after ingestion into the FHIR data store is fully indexed, so you can query the data. And then finally, there is machine learning and analytics services that you can apply on the healthcare data. That's where most of the customers are interested, because they want to make sense out of the data. So the QuickSight, Athena, and SageMaker are the kind of tools which you can use on the healthcare data in the FHIR data store in HealthLake. So let's look a little bit deeper. So end of the day, the entire purpose for HealthLake is to allow customers to make sense out of the data. And how that is done is by extracting more data point from unstructured data using natural language processing, analyzing the data and making predictions with tools like QuickSight, Athena, SageMaker, and also using the data to train machine learning models so that you can predict outcomes. We have a set of blogs that we have published, which basically shows, for example, how to take a Mimic3 sample data set and do sepsis detection, for instance. Again, you can apply it on your specific use case. These are examples of what is possible. There is another blog which talks about how to use SageMaker for detecting congestive heart failure using a sample data set. And finally, since the data is in FHIR format, it's easy now for providers and payers to share that with third party as well as with patients in order to satisfy the interoperability requirements. So that's the key benefit. Let's look a little bit closer onto an example of a freeform text, clinical text. So in this example, I'm showing a doctor note where a 62-year-old female patient with a history of type 2 diabetes has insulin usage, but no previous history of hypertension and so on. So once this is fed into HealthLake, HealthLake's integrated natural language processing capability will pick this up, and the trained machine learning models knows how to detect diagnosis. So it understands type 2 diabetes mellitus, for example. It understands insulin. It can detect the dates. And it also understands negation, where there is no previous history of hypertension. So the hypertension will not be included, even though the word hypertension appears in the text. So after parsing the text, the machine learning models convert it into a structured format, and then HealthLake converts it into nested JSON format, and then decorates it. And with each of this prediction, there's a score. As you can see here, it shows that this particular condition, there's 97% confident from the diagnosis case. And the score is important because it gives you how confident the machine learning model was in terms of the prediction that it made. And if the score is low, you might want to run it by a human being in order to understand if you want to rely on that, versus if the score is high, then you can take decision accordingly. So it's very transparent from that standpoint, and shows the confidence level. And all of this is available as soon as it's ingested without doing any separate task. Similarly, if there is a medical condition that appears, then the integrated NLP functionality in HealthLake also picks up the corresponding code. Like in this case, the RX norm code is the code which is assigned to each medication, and that is used for billing use case. So the RX norm code gets automatically populated into the record, even though it was not in the freeform text. It's something that is built into the NLP functionality itself. Similarly, for diseases, the ICD-10 code is picked up and added. So now after ingestion, you get more data point because the integrated NLP functionality is now adding these fields into the FHIR record itself. So now you can choose an ICD-10 code and you can start querying, whereas you did not have that when the record was ingested, because it was just a blob of text with some conditions itself. So as you can see, there is enrichment of the data that is happening in addition to conversion to FHIR format. End of the day, what we are trying to do is we're trying to show a view of the longitudinal view of the patient record. So here, once the different kinds of data is ingested across encounters, procedures, diagnosis, labs, tests, medications, it's very easy to create a chronological view where you get a complete picture of a patient and what they have gone through. And that allows you to go and get insights out of this. So that's where the right side comes in, where now you can say, hey, for this particular patient, or you can even do it in a cohort or a population of patient and say that, what is the risk of readmitting based on this particular conditions that they had, or what is the risk of a sudden disease happening? Or if you want to do claim data analysis, then you can say, look at the medical expenses and claims and so on. So the use cases are varied. It all depends on what you're trying to do. HealthLake provides a platform and a mechanism to normalize the data, put into a structured format, make it indexed, give you a robust set of APIs to query, and then bring all the analytics and machine learning tools to apply on that. So it ultimately helps to identify trends, make predictions, and also share the data with a third party, as we discussed, in an anonymized, de-identified way, so that there can be further research that can be done. So that's what HealthLake's, this slide kind of summarizes that from the structured normalized data, applying different kind of tools, you can basically get those outcomes. And we already talked about the interoperability part. Since we have standardized around HL7 FHIR format, it's very easy now to share the data across hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, providers, and that's where the CMS mandate kicks in as well. We understand that not all the healthcare data is in FHIR format yet, because it's relatively new standard. So the healthcare data exists in different formats like HL7, V2, CCD, CCDA, flat file, and so on. So we have partnered with the key leaders in this space, like Diameter Health, HealthLX, InterSystems, and Redox, who have solutions to help customers convert their data in different kind of formats and even have custom mapping. And they have built connectors which are integrated with HealthLake in order to change to file format and push it into HealthLake data store. So if you have needs in terms of converting your data into file format and get into HealthLake, you can use any of these connectors. They are already integrated into HealthLake console. And in the demo, I'll show you how they appear in the console. With a single click, you can access them. All right, so let's quickly summarize what we talked about. In HealthLake, if you see how it works, we have the structured and unstructured data in file format, which is ingested. If the data is not in file format, you can use one of the connector partners to convert them. Then HealthLake provides a robust set of API for creating and managing Fire Data Store, which is completely fully managed for you, so you don't have to worry about the infrastructure. It's scalable, it's compliant, it's HIPAA eligible, so you can store healthcare data, including PHI information on it. And then there's a set of API to export the data out, as well as search and query on the data. And then I talked about medical NLP being integrated, which allows you to transform unstructured data and ingest into HealthLake. And then finally, HealthLake allows you to use different analytics and machine learning tools like SageMaker, QuickSight, and also third-party applications to apply on the data itself to get further insights. In the day, we are seeing is customers are using HealthLake in order to understand population health management. I'll talk about a few of our customer use cases in a brief moment. They are also looking at improving quality of care and then increasing hospital efficiency. And there are many other use cases across peers, pharmaceutical companies, and medical device companies who are all using HealthLake for their specific use case. Let me talk to you about a specific customer use case, customer who has been with us during preview as well as launch, Rush University Medical Center. They got an opportunity to try out HealthLake during the preview phase. So there are two use cases that they had used HealthLake for. The first one was where they loaded patient data from across Chicago of their different blood pressure data in order to look at in which demographics patients were suffering from high blood pressure and how to improve care. So this was, again, a population health use case. And the second is where they are taking the COVID-19 patient data across the major hospitals in Chicago, working in close association with Chicago Department of Public Health in order to give them insights in terms of how patients reacted to different medications, to the vaccination, as well as how the uptake has been, and that way improve insights and provide better care. Let me talk about a second use case where I'll talk about a hospital use case now called Cortica. Cortica is a leading provider of advanced neurological therapies for children with autism, where they not only provide care, but they also have speech development and other offerings for to help the children. So they are using HealthLake in order to ingest all kinds of healthcare data across the medical data, the lab reports, as well as the different kinds of data that comes from the care that they are providing. And what they are doing with HealthLake is they're not only putting all of the data in a centralized repository, but also the goal is to see how the children are responding to the treatment and basically improve the treatment from that side, because it gives them better insight now in terms of where the gaps may lie, and also generate reports so that they can share with the parents and show them how the kids are doing over time. So we are very happy to have Cortica able to use HealthLake for such a noble cause. There are many other customers who have used HealthLake, and since we will not have time to go through all of them, so I'll just go directly into and just show you the different use cases, and then maybe talk to you about where you can learn more, and then show you a demo. So we have released HealthLake, as I mentioned to you earlier, as GA in 3 US regions right now: US East 1, US East 2, and US West 2. And you can see the technical documentation. It's in our webpage. You have a link from the product page itself. There is also all kinds of resources like blogs, webinars, as well as a fully created workshop which walks you end to end in terms of data ingestion, and then getting the data, getting quick sites and Athena kind of tool to apply on the data. So I'd highly encourage you to check the workshop out. With that, I would like to show you a demo of how HealthLake looks like. So I'm going to switch to my console now. All right, so let's look at a demo of Amazon HealthLake. So if you go to your management console, you will see something like this. As I mentioned earlier, HealthLake is available in 3 regions: US East 1, US East 2, and US West West 2. So we're going to go and click on Amazon HealthLake right here. I'm using US East 1, but as you can see, it's also available in the other 2 regions. So when you land on the landing page for HealthLake, you'll see something like this. If you have not created a data store, you'll see Create Data Store here. The data store is the fully managed Fire data store, as we had discussed earlier. Since I've already created a data store, it says View Data Store. So let's go ahead and see how the creation looks like. So when you first create a data store, you will come to this screen, and you can name your data store right here. And the format is fixed to Fire R4 format. And if you choose to experience the service, you can go ahead and click this button to load synthetic data, Cynthia, which is built into HealthLake itself. So when the data store is created, it'll be pre-populated with Cynthia data. We take security very seriously, especially on the healthcare side. So you have an option to encrypt the data store with either AWS supplied key, or you can supply your own key. I just wanted to point out that at all point in time, or any point in time, you have full control over the data. AWS does not see the data. We do not use customers' data for training machine learning models. We have separate means to acquire data, purchase data, annotate them, and use that. So you are in full control of your data at all point in time. So once you're done, you can go ahead and create a data store. It takes a little while to create it because of provisioning the underlying infrastructure and so on. I've already done that in the interest of time. So I'm going to open the data store that I have created. As you can see, you have a data store ID. There are some basic information about it. There's the endpoint and earn for the data store. And there are options to manage the data store itself. So as I mentioned earlier, there are those APIs for create, read, update, and delete. And these are convenient ways in console which has an equivalent API. So you have delete option. You can query, search and query. Then you have an option to import new data into the data store, or export data out from the data store. So we're going to go and run some queries to see how it looks like. So when you go to the run query page, you have an option to select search with get. You can create, read, update, or delete. These are the operations you can do on the data store. Let's look at search. And here you have the different Fire resources that HealthLake supports. There are, I believe, around 71 resources that you can use and query. We're going to look at document reference. And the reason is because document reference is the field which is used to send unstructured data. And I'll show you momentarily how that is done. So if you select document reference here, you'll see there are many custom fields here: detect entities, ICD-10, RX norm, and so on. These are the fields which HealthLake populates by extracting medical entities and medications from the unstructured data. So when the unstructured data comes in, none of these fields will be there if the integrated NLP doesn't kick in and populate that. So that's what HealthLake does. It reads the unstructured data, as we saw earlier, and then extracts medical entities and medications, and then fills up these different fields so it's available for query and analysis. Now let's look at, let's say, entity text, and I'm going to search for hypertension. If I run this query, it pulls up fire formatted nested JSON. So it's not fun to look at nested JSON, but we are going to go and look at some of these fields. So the way the unstructured data or the freeform text is passed is base 64 encoded string right here, as you can see. And if I take this base 64 encoded string, we don't touch the original string. So the original string is left alone. So to demonstrate that, let's say we go to base 64 decode and take that and decode it. You can see that it is a clinical text the doctor has written, which says a patient 87-year-old has a past condition of cardiac catheterization, and there are medications prescribed and so on. So all of this gets encoded into base 64 and passed in here in the attachment data part. And what the integrated medical NLP functionality in HealthLake does, it understands, it uses machine learning models, natural language processing models, basically, to go and understand medical conditions. And there are different variations in which doctors write these conditions. So it understands that, like in this case, cardiac arrhythmia. And it also understands different medications. And then it looks up the corresponding code, like for diseases, it looks up the ICD-10 code and populates that right here, as you can see, I49.9. It also provides a score, which is basically the confidence of the machine learning model in that prediction. And then it also makes that in a structured format, so you can now query based on the code. So as you can see, all of this was done by the integrated NLP, and those are made available as key value pair. So if we scroll down, you can see here, for instance, the ICD entity text palpitation, which has a value of 599, and the score was 96%, and so on. So this is, with this functionality, what happens is now you can query based on the ICD-10 code, for example, which was not available when the data was ingested. So you get more data points from the data itself. So that's the document reference field. You can also go and query other file resources. Most common ones are already there in this particular field. And there are ways in which you can export the data out as well and flatten it and then run analytics on top of it. So we have a workshop that we have published, which walks you step by step in terms of how to do that. And I can quickly show you the workshop right here. We'll highly encourage you to go through this workshop. In the interest of time, I'm not able to go through in detail, but if you go through this workshop, it'll show you how to set up HealthLake, how to import data, how to apply Athena and QuickSight in order to get more insight. So I'll highly encourage you to go and experience this workshop. Okay. The last thing that I want to point out is, as I mentioned earlier, there are partners with whom we have worked closely to build connectors to HealthLake. And these are the partners who will help you transform your data if it is not in file format. So we have 4 partners. They have already integrated their solution with HealthLake. We have Redux, InterSystems, Diameter Health, and HealthLX. So each of these companies not only provide a transformation of data from your existing format like HL7v2, CCD, CCDA, CSV, and so on to file format, but they also provide other solutions in order to enrich the data and so on. The way you access is just a single click. For example, you go to Marketplace in HealthLake console, and then when you click on View Product, it takes you to their listing in Marketplace right here. At this point, you can see the details of what formats they support, what are the functionalities of the connector. There is pricing information as well. and you can click on the button to subscribe and use it with HealthLake. With that, I would like to conclude my demo today. Thank you very much for your time.